I'm going to show you how to work duplicate stitch to create an embroidered effect on your socks. So this is using duplicate stitch to create those little pops of color. And here's what it looks like unblocked before I did the duplicate stitch. So you can see the duplicate stitch is worked in these little spots where there's these little twinkly bits. And that's where I'll be working the duplicate stitch. Now, you can see on the inside, here's what it looks like on the inside. It looks a bit messy, but most of those colored yarn bits are kind of stuck underneath the floats from the color work in order to keep them a little bit neater. I have all of these little tails, and I leave all of my tails about a ½ inch long, I would say, whenever I'm cutting things, because that allows just a little bit more room in case you, well, when you tug on it, when you wash it, all those things, that'll just keep it a little bit more inside. It gives it a little bit of slack to stay so that it doesn't pop out to the right side of the fabric. So the first thing that you need to do is you need, for these particular socks, we want to have little bobbins of color so that we can work each, see if we can get that in focus, doesn't like that. We need these little bobbins, there we go, so that we can separate out the colors because the stripes in this yarn are still on. This is my leftover ball, so the stripes are still in there. So I'm going to make these individual bobbins so that I can use each color because it only takes a few inches of each color. So in order to work the bobbin or to create a bobbin, I'll just move this stuff out of the way so it's easier to see. I'll start with a short tail, maybe 6 inches to a foot, and I just kind of grasp that in my palm. And then I'm going to make a little gun with my hand, and I'm going to wrap this yarn around my thumb and then my finger, thumb, finger. I'm creating a figure 8 here. So I'm just going round, round, and round my thumb and finger in order to get all of the green yarn into a little bobbin so that I can get to the next stripe. And I will say I didn't make a bobbin out of the sort of taupe colored yarn, the next stripe, because it pretty much matches, or maybe even exactly matches. So I didn't use that one for duplicate stitch. So once I've run out of green yarn, I'm going to cut the tail there. And then I'm going to pinch the center of the 8 and very gently push that off, so both my finger. But I'm sort of continuing this pinch situation here. And then I'm going to take the tail that I ended with, and I'm going to wrap it round the bobbin enough times, not super tight, because when I get to the end, I do want to be able to sort of tuck that end under, which is sometimes a bit easier said than done. See if I can get it through. I think I went too tight. So I want to sort of tuck it under. It's sort of tucked in there. And then when I'm ready to use this bobbin, I'll just be able to pull sort of like a center pull ball of yarn, and that just comes right out. Okay, so there I have my bobbins. And let me show you how to work duplicate stitch now. So I need to thread my tapestry needle. I like to fold my yarn in half in order to do that. And then I'm just gonna give myself a little extra slack so that it's not pulling. One thing that's really important when you are working duplicate stitch is to not have too much tightness. So you need to do this whole process pretty loosely. So I'm just going to find a little sparkly bit. So say that one right there, and I'm going to take my tapestry needle from behind, from the back of the work, and insert into that stitch right where the 2 legs join in sort of a V. I'm going to pull my yarn through, and then I'm going to go behind from right to left, in this case you can go from left to right or right to left. It doesn't matter, but just be consistent, whichever you choose. So I tend to go from right to left. So I'm going to go behind those two legs, and then I want to insert back into the same spot where I came from in the first place. Now, what I don't want is for these two strands to cross over each other. So that means I want to make sure that the next thing that I do, I'm going to the left so that they're not going to cross. And in order to keep things neat, I want to actually go underneath these strands on the inside. So I'm going to kind of find where the next spot I want to go in is and mark that with my thumb, and then turn it to the inside. And then I'm just going to sort of thread this yarn, trying to keep other things out of the way, gently through the strands from behind, and just sort of to the general area of where the next spot is that I want to go. Now I'm going to turn it back to the right side, and I'm going to find that spot. It's where those two legs come together in that V. And I'm going to very gently, again, pull this through. I don't want to pull too hard, because if I pull this too hard, it'll make that stitch too small and it'll disappear. So again, I'm going from right to left. I go behind those two legs, and then back to where I came from. And that's what I'm going to do throughout. I'm not going to do them all in green. I think I did like 4 or 5 in green. And they are sort of, the same color in a cluster together. That makes it easier. If you want, you can spread out your colors a little bit more, but I just thought that it looked cute with all the colors kind of clustered together. I'll show you that here. So the same color is sort of clustered together. And I still like that. I thought that was sweet. And it's a lot easier to work. So again, for the next one, I'll kind of find where I want to go next. Actually, I think I'm going to go to this one down here. So I need to just go underneath some of these floats to generally where that spot is for the next one. Doesn't have to be perfect, just kind of in that area, so that the yarn is traveling beneath the floats, and that keeps it from being like an additional float that's like a vertical float. So then I'm going to come in to that stitch there. And very gently, I'm going to pull to make sure I'm getting the yarn all the way through. And then I'm going to go from right to left behind the two legs of that stitch above and back into the spot where I came from. And I'm just going to show you so you can see what happens. If I pull too hard on this yarn as I go, this is what's going to happen. So let's just make sure I've got the right, oops. Okay, I guess I pulled on the wrong one there. But even on that one, okay, so if I pulled on that, you can kind of see how it disappears. So you can't really see the stitch in the middle nearly as well, especially like the right leg has kind of ended up behind the dark gray that was beneath it. So I can fix that by pulling it out again. But I want to make sure that I'm being really gentle. So when I am finished and I've decided like, okay, I have enough of those, then I need to weave this end in. And I want to do that using a combo of duplicate stitch on the inside and weaving the ends behind those floats. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just, this is so hard to see in a video, but you're trying to go behind the same spot where you just did your green stitch, not into that one because you'll undo it, but just the leg up to the right and above, staying on the wrong side of the fabric, and into the leg to the right, and then coming back to that same spot. So it's the same idea of duplicate stitch, it's just doing it on the wrong side of the fabric. And just, you can check to make sure it doesn't show on the right side, but doing it in the same stitch where you just did your duplicate stitch on the right side means that even if it does show on the right side, it's kind of okay because you want that color to be visible anyway. And yeah, I can fuss with these things to make them make sure that they don't disappear in there. And then I'll go underneath these strands. I'm kind of following the path that I came from in the first place. And I really don't have to do this very much in order to secure it, but just a bit. And now I'm doing duplicate stitch with the green one from before. And coming around here. This part does not at all have to be exact, but it's just kind of the general idea. And then I'll just kind of go behind those strands to get back over here. And I feel like that's sufficient for me to be secured enough there. So at this point, I would probably just trim this with approximately a 1/2 inch tail. And then I would have to do the same weaving in of this other one. And again, make sure that while you're weaving in, you're being really careful not to tug too hard because it's really easy to mess up that stitch, that final stitch on the right side, and you don't want that to be too tight. So if I tugged on it, it would just sort of disappear. And that is not what I'm looking for. So I want to make sure that I'm being really gentle, not tugging too much, and so that what I end up with is an actual stitch right there. Okay, so that is how you work duplicate stitch and how you get this lovely result in the long run. And I would do it before blocking so that everything is pretty nice when you all have it all finished. This sock, I haven't worked the heel yet. So you can see that's the stitching where I'll pull that out, that waste yarn, in order to create my heel.